Hey friends, welcome back. This is John in the United Kingdom speaking to Elton John fans throughout the world. Welcome along. Now, my most recent video was a review of this album here, Revamp, which was a 2018 collection of sort of rock and pop cover versions of Elton John songs. Now, I invited your comments, and I've had quite a few people who have written in on various topics, which I will address. I've got a few things to correct, and I've got some more cover versions of Elton John songs to review. My general feeling was that having listened to all the tracks on both of these, I preferred the Restoration album, which of course is more sort of country and western interpretations of Elton songs, compared with Revamp. Although there are good tracks, there's some standout tracks on both of them. But what did you think? Well, Mario wrote in to say that it's been years since he'd heard anything off both of these albums, but overall he prefers the Restoration collection. Now, Beth agrees that Restoration is a superior effort. However, she does like Coldplay's version of We All Fall in Love Sometimes. Now, that track I rated a 10 out of 10 cover of an Elton John song. And I rated it as the best cover version I've heard so far of any of his songs. She's also suggested some other ones, which I'm going to look at. One is Jeff Buckley's version of the same song from Captain Fantastic. She also mentions Ray Charles' version of Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest Word. I'm going to review that as well. And also Joe Cocker's version of Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest Word, which I won't review because that is on the Two Rooms album. I'm also going to look at a song by Sarah Burrell, I hope I pronounced that right, which is her version of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and Brandy Carlisle's version of Madman Across the Water. All of these, I should tell you, are pretty good. Now, 007 agrees that Coldplay version is great. It's also the only cover on the album that they actually care for. I thought there's some pretty reasonable other ones amongst some less successful efforts, shall we say. Adam's written in saying about Jeff Buckley's version of We All Fall in Love Sometimes. I will look at that in a moment. And Nigel has pointed out a couple of errors I made, and apologies for these. Now, I said that the Two Rooms song was on the Two Rooms CD. I've got the Two Rooms CD here, and of course it isn't on there. They probably took the title from the song Two Rooms, which of course was on 21 at 33. It's an important song because it was kind of a song that Bernie and Elton wrote together, which was bringing them back together after kind of a time in which they were writing separately and with other songwriting partners, Gary Osborne, Tim Rice, people like that for Elton. So it kind of reunited them in a way, and that song was about them being brought back together in that process. And of course, they've been writing together ever since, and we're very grateful for that. I also said RuPaul was on Two Rooms. RuPaul isn't. That one comes in on duets. That was an Elton John duet. So I will be doing a separate review on Two Rooms, which is the one I haven't got to yet. Looking forward actually to being reunited with this. Quite a few critical comments already, but let's give it a chance. Dirk isn't too excited about it, says that Two Rooms is absolutely dreadful and a horrible listening experience. Well, I'm going to give it a go. There's some good artists on there, people like Sinead O'Connor, the Beach Boys, Kate Bush. So I'll have another listen to that. I fear it may be sort of slightly trapped in its time, but we will see. Finally, Hercules saying albums like this are not in their collection. They don't like cover versions apart from Elton's own cover versions, which appeared in the late 60s, of course. Elton recorded a lot of cover versions, some of which have only recently seen the light of day. I'm not particularly excited by some of those until the early 70s, when he is doing some interesting work and, of course, covering things like John Lennon's songs as well. So I'm just going to look now at 4 cover versions of Elton songs that have been recommended by viewers. The first one is Jeff Buckley's version of We All Fall in Love Sometimes. This comes from a live broadcast album in 1992, which brought us his version of Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, which is brilliant, I think. This one of We All Fall in Love has a very gentle electric lead guitar accompaniment. We get a mournful, reflective vocal, which is occasionally shaky in parts, which is quite affecting and impassioned. I find the refrain less successful than Elton's version, certainly less successful than the Coldplay version. A little bit uneven and a little bit elaborate. However, the whole experience is moving, and I would mark this one as a fairly good 5. By the way, I've made a playlist which I'll link below of Elton John cover versions. That's cover versions of his songs if you want to listen to these all in turn. The next one I'm looking at is from this album, Ray Charles' Genius Loves Company. And this is a series of collaborations by Ray Charles. I think it was the last thing he ever released. And apparently this track, Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest Word, was the last track he ever recorded, which makes it especially poignant. We've got a new string arrangement that comes in at the start. Then we have Ray singing, and then Elton comes in, sounding in fine vocal form. I've got to say, Ray's voice, even though he's quite sort of advanced in years, is really flexible. He managed to get all those high notes. The break, instrumental break, is perhaps not quite as good as in the original, which had that kind of French, that sort of European flavour, didn't it? The whole thing's a little bit fiercer than the original, which perhaps causes it to lose just a little bit of that original charm. Now, just in passing, I should say that Ray Charles is responsible for one of my favourite ever cover versions, not of an Elton John song, but if you've heard him singing Eleanor Rigby, absolutely brilliant. Give that a chance. Not on this particular CD, but seek that one out if you can. Overall, though, I'd say this is good. 6. Now, the next one is Brandi Carlile's version of Madman Across the Water. Brandi Carlile is an American singer-songwriter who also appears with Elton on the Lockdown sessions there. This is a performance from an awards ceremony. It lasts 7.5 minutes. It's very much guitar-led. Brandi Carlile's got this wonderful sort of lived-in voice, a lot of atmosphere with that, and the band she's working with, really exceptional, very tight band. She powers through the refrain on this. She hasn't quite got that sort of unsettling lunacy that Elton brings to it. And perhaps just lacking quite that passion that Elton has. Nevertheless, it's an exciting track, this. The cello replicates the strings that are on the original, and that works quite effectively. And it shows just what a great song this is. So fine guitar work, some fine improvisation later on. And I think this is a very good version indeed. One of the best I've heard of this. I'm going to give it an excellent 8. Now, the other one is Sarah Burrell, who is, again, an American singer-songwriter and performer who's appeared in stage musicals as well. So she's got a very strong voice. She's doing her version of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. This is live at the Variety Playhouse Atlanta. So it's from that album, which is called, sorry, the album's called Brave Enough. We've got a gentle piano intro here. Interestingly, completely reharmonized. It's very different from how Elton does it. And I like that. She's taking chances with the song. It's discordant. She's singing against a discordant background. That means that the notes don't fit into the original chords that Elton wrote. But that's part of the charm of a cover version. You do something different with it. She changes key on the word blues, which is interesting. She delivers a very strong, confident vocal, which is heartfelt. And the melody carries this through. Because we know the melody, we can go there with her, and we don't mind that these different things are happening underneath. Later on in the song, she does move to the traditional harmonies of Elton, so we get a bit of that as well. This is impressive. It's a good listen. It's something different with Elton's song, and I think that's always the key with a cover version. Don't just do the same thing. Do something different, make it your own, and she has done that. I would say very good. 7. So if you know any more good versions, good cover versions of Elton John songs, please let me know in the comments below. I'll have a look at them and I'll review them. Next up is going to be Two Rooms. So I'm going to take that apart and see what I think of that. And it's all building into my spreadsheet of the best Elton John cover versions. We might end up with a top 20 or a top 30. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Don't forget, we're still standing.